Okay, this is section 1 or section 1-2, literal equations. You're going to be solving for a variable other than the variable that's solved for. Um, let's look at the first one. The first one's an equation that kind of helps you remember how to just solve a two-step equation. You have 2x plus 5 is equal to 9, and we're asked to solve for x. In this equation, you need to subtract 5 from both sides of your equation. That would leave you with 2x equals 4. This means 2 times some unknown number is equal to 4. To solve for the x, you would divide both sides by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So you get your answer by using the subtraction property and the division property. Now watch on this next equation, it's very similar. See how you have a b? You need to move the b by subtracting it from both sides of the equation. That leaves you with ax is equal to y minus b. And just like over here when we subtracted our 9 minus 5, the second operation that we did was we divided both sides by 2. So that's what we need to do on this one. We're going to divide now by the coefficient a. We're solving for the variable x. A divided by a is 1. 1 times x. You've actually answered it. You have y minus b divided by a. So what you're doing is you're rearranging the formula to solve for a different variable. This one is solved for y, now we solve for x. Let's try another one just like that down here on number 1. You have this one says solve the equation for y. If there's an x term on this side of the equal sign that needs to be moved, we're going to add 5x because that would give us a 0 plus y. So we've solved for y. Now be very careful and do not combine the 5 with the negative 56 because they're unlike terms. This has an x and this one doesn't, so they're not like terms. If you put the 5x in front, you would write minus 56 because that negative sign means that that 56 is subtracted. So now you've rearranged it and you solve for y. This is very good to know because this one will help you when you're graphing linear equations. Okay, look at the next one. This time, this is the actual perimeter formula for a rectangle, and we're going to take the formula and solve it for w. We have on the right side of the equal sign 2 times L plus 2W. Since we're adding 2L to 2W, we're going to move that term first. We want to subtract it. 2L subtract 2L means we have 0. You don't have to write the 0, just bring down your 2W. Take the P minus 2L and write it horizontally to show that you can't really subtract because you don't know what your variables are. But this one, we want to solve for our W. 2 times W means you're multiplying, so the inverse of multiplication is division. You would divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. That leaves you with 1W. So really, since we don't know what the P and the L stand for, we don't have numbers to replace those letters, we've just rearranged it, and that would be your final answer. P minus 2L equals, divided by 2 equals W. Alright, let's try on the next page, number 3. On this one you notice a little different. This one they want us to solve for R, but the R is inside a quantity where P we will have to multiply. So we're going to have to get rid of the parentheses by using the distributive property. You're going to multiply P times 1, which is P, P times RT, which is just PRT. You're just going to show that you're multiplying those 3 letters, just sitting them next to each other. Now since there's addition of this P, we need to move this P first. To move a P On the other side, we're going to subtract it on both sides of the equation. So we have a minus p is equal to, and we still have the PRT, but the p minus p created a 0. So now we have multiplication with 3 variables. And remember, we're trying to solve for r. So we need to get the multiplication of p and t on the other side of the equal sign. So we're going to have to divide out on both sides the p and the t. Make sure you show it with a pretty long division bar here, because you're really taking this quantity a minus p and dividing it by pt. The p's divide to make 1, and so do the t's. So what ends up happening is you're finished. You have your r, you've rearranged all your variables, you have a formula that's equivalent to the one you started with, but it's solved for a different variable. Let's kind of talk about the steps we used on that one. This one we used the subtraction property, and then we used the division property to get our r isolated on one side of the equal sign. And that's really how you start these. You look at what operations are next to the variable that I need to solve for. If you look at the next one, this one doesn't have adding or subtracting, it only has multiplication. So we're going to have to move things around so that we have h solved for. This is actually the area formula of a triangle. So say we had the area and we had the base and we just had to figure out the height. We can rearrange this formula so that we can find the height. First, let's get rid of the fraction. Anytime you multiply a reciprocal times a number times its reciprocal, you will get 1. So on this one, you're going to take that 1/2 and turn it into 2 over 1. And when you do 1/2 times 2 over 1, that right here becomes 1. They you can say they reduce to 1, so you don't need the 1. 2 over 1 just means 2. You're multiplying 2 times a. Go ahead and use a capital letter A. Use the exact letters that are in the problem. Don't change capital letters to lowercase letters. When you're solving for the h, you're going to be dividing out the b. That will make sure our b's divide out. That becomes 1 times h. So 1h would equal 2a divided by b. What you've done, you've taken the formula and solved it for h. Let's try number 5. This one looks a little bit like number 3, where we have a set of parentheses on the right side of the equation. Since t is inside those parentheses, we're going to need to distribute the factor n, the n times the a, and the n times the t. And on this one, just bring down your 2 capital S on the left side of your equal sign, and then distribute your n to remove your parentheses. And then look at it for a minute. The t is what we're solving for. So since we have multiplication and addition, we're going to move the addition first. We're going to create a 0 by subtracting NA. That entire term, NA minus NA, becomes a 0. So that leaves you with just n times t on the right side of the equation. And over here, since we don't have any values to replace these variables, we're just going to write it as 2s minus NA. And then now we're going to solve for t. The opposite of multiplication is division. So you divide, always balance your equation. Make sure whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you do to the other side. So by dividing out the n's, we've answered the variable t. So t would equal 2 times s minus NA divided by n. This is your final answer. You've rearranged your formula. These really are equivalent formulas. This formula is just not solved for the one you're solving for, but they do, if you do your correct math, if you do the operations, the properties correctly, you will have the same equivalent equation. Number 6. This one is going to be helpful anytime in a word problem they describe a geometric shape. You're going to want to draw the picture. I think it'll always help you if you sketch a picture. I'm just going to sketch a rectangle since they're describing a rectangle. Let me read the equation. The question. The length of a rectangle is 4 feet less than 2 times the width. If the perimeter is 238, find the width of the rectangle. Alright, this one, the length is being described as 4 feet less than. These two words, you need to be very careful where you put the minus sign. The minus sign needs to follow in front of what's being described as less. 4 less would be written minus 4. 2 times the width. Width is an unknown number, so we're going to use W. So we can label both lengths of this rectangle 4 less than 2 times the width using the expression 2W minus 4. And since we don't know the width, we'll label the picture with W's on either side for the width. Perimeter is a geometry term that means the distance around a polygon or a shape. So on this one, we're going to take all 4 of these lengths and we're going to add them up. I'm going to go ahead and write it out using all 4. And I'm putting plus signs in between because I'm showing perimeter. Perimeter is when you add all 4 lengths of this rectangle. So the question does tell us the answer to perimeter. So now we have to combine our like terms. Sometimes it helps if I'm going to take a red pen and underline my W's. This is a W, a W, a W, and a W. So all 4 of those W's, we're going to add the coefficients. That's called combining your like terms. These are understood to be ones. So you have 4, 5, 6. You have 6W. 6W. Now we're going to put our minus 4 with our minus 4. You could think of it as a negative 4 minus 4. That would make a negative 8. And then go ahead and bring down your perimeter, 238. To solve for W, we need to move the 8. You're going to add 8 to both sides. You get 6W equals 246. And to solve for W now, we just need to divide out our 6. When you divide 246 by 6, you get 41. So our width is 41. You can check it if you want to put the width back in and see if it works by replacing W with 41. Look at number 7. On this one, you're just asked to solve for a number. When it says a number or the number, that just means the unknown. And like using W for width, we'll use, anytime we see something that says a number, we'll use the letter N. We'll let N represent the number. More than means you're adding. 5 times means you're multiplying. So 5 times a number, more than, you're adding 4 to that, is equal to, that's where you're going to put your equal sign. Now here comes that less than again. Less than, if you have a 29 less than, that means you're subtracting 29 from the description that comes next, twice the number. Remember, N is our unknown number. So what I've done is I've taken the sentence and changed it to an equation by using the words more than, I add, times or multiplying. Just don't put a times sign. You want to not think of that as a variable. Now when you're going to solve this one, since the 2n and the 5n are separated by an equal sign, you cannot combine that. Do not combine that and make that 7n. You'll mess this problem up. The equals keeps those separate, so you have to bring the entire term to one side. I'm going to move the 2 in. Moving the 2 in keeps the n term positive. See how 5 subtract 2 is 3. So I end up on the left side of the equation with 3n plus 4. Make sure that minus sign comes down with the 29. That means the 29 is negative. Now because I brought the variable term over to the left side, I have to take my constant to the right. To make a 0 out of a plus 4, you have to subtract 4. Remember, balance your equation, subtract 4 on both sides. So I get 3 times the number is equal to, let's see, what would that be? 33. Negative 33. Negative 29 minus 4. Even though you're saying minus, since it's a negative to start with, you really combine your two negatives. So you have 3 times n is equal to negative 33. To solve for n, you divide both sides by 3 because 3 divided by 3 is 1. And you get n is equal to, a negative divided by a positive is always a negative. So your answer on that one would be negative 11. Alright, number 8. John has a coupon of 35% off all books in the bookstore. He received a discount of $166.25 cents. What was the total cost of the books before his discount? So he has a discount of 35%. So that's 35% means per 100. I think I'll show you this one with a proportion. You have 35 out of 100 is the percent you have off. Your discount was $166.25. So we want to know out of what total cost was that discount. So you can just cross multiply on this one. When you set up a proportion, make sure you multiply your numerator times your denominator and then your numerator times your denominator. So you have 35 times x is equal to, anytime you multiply a number by 100, the decimal moves twice. You can grab a calculator if you want to, but what's going to happen is that decimal is going to move 2 times. So it'll end up being 16,625. To finish, you're going to divide out your 35. Let me grab a calculator real quick, do that for you. Looks like it's 475. So that's the total cost. This is the total cost with this discount, because that would represent 35%. If you want to check that, you could always put the number back in and put it over 475. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to put it on the calculator. If you put in $166.25 and you divide that by your answer, see how you get a decimal 0.35? That means 35%. 0.35, if I multiply that by 100, that means it's 35%. So that's your discount. But your total cost is $475. Okay, the last one for the notes today is a formula for area of a circle, and they want you to find the radius. Make sure to ask me for a formula chart if you need one. We'll use it all year, so you'll like having one. But the formula chart says that area of a circle is pi times radius squared. Look at the answer. See how pi is part of the answer? We don't need to put the square centimeters when we replace our area, because that's the measurement of area. That's not part of the answer. This is the actual answer. 81 pi is what you want to replace your capital A with, because that's the answer to the area. And then we're trying to find the radius. Now, anytime we want to solve for a variable, remember when we first started we were solving for variables? This time we're going to solve for r squared. I'm going to divide out the pi. The pi symbol can be divided because anything divided by the same thing is 1. So that would give you 1 times r squared. So you'd get r squared is equal to 81. What this means is you're trying to find what would the radius be. If I'm squaring r, I need to know what times itself gives me 81. If you don't know, you can always use the inverse, the square root of 81. And that will give you the answer. 9 is the radius because 9 times 9 is 81. And that's the square root. Okay, let me know if you have any other questions.